Welcome to sleepy Japan. Tonight, we drift together into a quiet story from Japan, a tale shaped by stillness, tradition, and the soft rhythm of night. Before we begin, take a slow breath in and exhale gently. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your hands rest. Let your thoughts begin to settle as the world around you softens into calm. Imagine a peaceful evening, light from a simple paper lantern drifting across the room, a cool breeze moving just beyond the window. And in the distance, a single temple bell echoing through the night. Each sound carries you deeper into rest. There is nothing you need to do now, nowhere you need to be. Just breathe and let the night open gently around you. Feel peace moving through your body, from your chest to your shoulders, to the quiet rhythm of your breath. The world outside grows silent. Only the sound of your breathing remains, and the soft promise of dreams waiting to unfold. Now, as the moon rises above the hills and the night deepens, let us begin tonight's story. The Ghost of Sakura. Long, long ago, in a time when cherry blossoms fell like snow, and the seasons turned with the certainty of tide, the elders tell us of a man whose name would be remembered, not for power, not for wealth, but for a love so great, it reached beyond this world. They say his name was Sōgorō. In the province of Shimōsa, where rice fields stretched like green seas, and mountains stood watch over villages of thatched roofs, the people lived as their ancestors had lived, planting in spring, harvesting in autumn, offering thanks to the gods, and trusting in the mercy of their Lord. The castle of Sakura stood upon a hill, its white walls gleaming in the morning sun, its stone foundations deep and strong, a place where generations of the Hotta family had ruled, with wisdom, with justice, with care for those who tilled the land. But the world, as all things do, was changing. When Hotta Kaga no Kami departed this life, his spirit joining the ancestors in the realm beyond, his son, Kotsuke no Suke Masanobu, inherited the castle, the lands, the people, and all the responsibilities they carried. And with him, something new came to Sakura. At first, it was subtle, like the first chill of autumn that whispers of winter. The peasants noticed small changes, a new tax here, an additional levy there, payments that their fathers had not known, burdens that their grandfathers would not have recognized. They bent their backs lower and worked their fields harder, telling themselves that perhaps this was temporary, that perhaps next season would be easier, that perhaps their Lord would remember the old ways. But seasons passed, one into another. Spring blossoms gave way to summer heat. Autumn harvests yielded to winter snows, and still the taxes grew, like shadows lengthening at day's end. The people began to hunger. In 136 villages, from Chiba to Buji, across 2 provinces, farmers who had never known want began to know it intimately. Children grew thin, old people grew thinner, and in the evenings, when families gathered around their small fires, there was often more silence than rice in the bowls. Some tried to sell their land, but none would buy, for what is land worth, when the harvest cannot feed the one who plants it? Some abandoned their fields and fled to other provinces, leaving behind empty houses, overgrown gardens, and the graves of ancestors they could no longer honour. 700 men became beggars. 185 houses fell into ruin. Land that once produced 7,000 kokus of rice lay untilled, returning to wildness, and even the temples, those places of peace and prayer, began to decay, for those who supported them had nothing left to give. And through all of this, in the village of Awahashi, there lived a man named Sōgorō. He was 48 years old, neither young nor yet old, a man in the fullness of life, with a wife named Man, and 4 children whose laughter was the music of his days. He was chief of his village, a position of trust, for he was known as a man of judgment, of ability, of courage, one who spoke plainly, who listened carefully, who could be relied upon when times grew difficult. And times had grown very difficult indeed. The village elders met often in those days, gathering in hushed voices, in shadowed rooms, speaking of their troubles, their fears, their hopes, wondering what could be done, if anything could be done at all. They had petitioned the local officials again and again, their requests returned unanswered, or answered with silence, which is the cruelest answer of all. They had appealed to the councillors at the castle, standing before the great gates, humble and patient, waiting for hours, for days, for any word of mercy. But no mercy came. And so, on a day when autumn leaves were falling, golden and red, drifting like prayers to the earth, the village elders gathered beneath ancient pines, where their grandfathers had gathered before them, and their grandfathers' grandfathers before that. 143 village chiefs assembled, each carrying the weight of their people's suffering, each knowing that the path ahead was uncertain as mist. They decided they must go to Yedo, to the Lord's palace in the great city, to make their petition heard, whatever the cost might be. When Sōgorō heard of this plan, he stood before them and spoke words that fell like stones into still water, words that would echo through all that was to come. "My masters," he said quietly, "this is no easy matter. We have appealed to our province and been refused. We have petitioned the councillors and been ignored. If we go to Yedo, we will not be heard there either. And if we thrust our petition into the street, into the very hands of power, we will be arrested, imprisoned, perhaps killed. I tell you this truth, so you may know what lies before us. If you are determined to go, then bid farewell to your parents, your wives, your children. Say your goodbyes as if you will not return. For that, my friends, is the likely truth." A silence fell over the assembly, heavy as winter snow, deep as the ocean, and in that silence, each man looked into his own heart and saw there the faces of those he loved and the faces of those who were starving and had to choose between them. One by one, they chose. They would go to Yedo. The appointed day arrived, cold and bright, frost glittering on bare branches like scattered diamonds, the world holding its breath between seasons. The village chiefs gathered at Funabashi, wrapping their thin coats against the wind, checking their provisions, fortifying their courage, while above them, crows circled in the pale winter sky. But Sōgorō did not come. On the first day, they waited, thinking perhaps he had been delayed. On the second day, they grew concerned and sent a messenger to his house. The messenger, a man named Rokurobei, found Sōgorō at home, sitting calmly by his brazier, warming his hands, as peaceful as a monk in meditation. "Master Sōgorō," Rokurobei said, trying to keep the sharpness from his voice, "the others are waiting. We made a covenant. Why have you not come?" Sōgorō looked up, his face serene, and gestured to his stomach. "Forgive me, my friend. I am troubled by an old ailment, a pain that comes and goes. You know how it is. I must rest a day or two. Then I will join you. Please give my apologies to the others." Rokurobei returned and reported this news, and the others were angry, feeling betrayed by one who had spoken so boldly, yet now hung back in safety. "Let him stay behind then," they said. "We do not need him. We will succeed without him." And so they went to Yedo, those determined men, and lodged in a street called Bakurocho, and tried again and again to present their petition to the officers, to the officials, to anyone who would listen. But doors closed before them, faces turned away, and they were sent back to their inn, empty-handed and despairing. What they did not know, what they could not have known, was that Sōgorō had stayed behind for a reason deeper than illness. The stories tell us that on the night before he was to leave, when the moon was full and bright as polished silver, he called his wife and children to him, and his relations, and those he held most dear. And there, by the light of a single lamp, he spoke to them in a voice calm and clear as temple bells. "I am going to Yedo," he said, "and I will not return. Not because I lack courage, but because I have seen what must be done. The others, they think petition will be enough. They think officials will listen, that mercy will prevail. But I know differently. I know that to save the people, someone must do more than petition. Someone must do what cannot be forgiven. Someone must be willing to become a criminal so that others may live. I give my life freely for the people of this land. And if my death brings them relief, then I will die content." His wife, Man, did not weep, though her heart was breaking like ice in spring. His children, too young to understand fully, felt the weight of the moment nonetheless, and held their father's hands in silence. He gave them his instructions, his wishes, told them where to bury him, how to remember him, asked them not to grieve, but to live well, and remember why he died. And then, as dawn approached, he departed. When word reached Yedo that Sōgorō was coming after all, the others felt their courage return, for they knew that if Sōgorō was coming, he had a plan. And indeed, he did. "We have tried the proper channels," he told them, when they met in a tea house near the temple of Asakusa, "and been ignored at every turn. There is only one path left to us now. We must appeal directly to the shogun himself." A murmur of shock, of fear, rippled through the room, for what Sōgorō proposed was unthinkable: to approach the shogun without permission, to thrust a petition at the most powerful man in all Japan, was a crime punishable by death. But Sōgorō's face was calm as still water. "I know the penalty," he said softly. and I accept it. This is why I came late, so you would not be implicated. If only one man does this, only one man will die, and that man will be me." They tried to dissuade him. Of course they did. But Sōgorō had already made his choice, had already said goodbye to his family, had already walked through the gate that separates life from death. And so they waited, all through the cold month, until word came that the shogun would visit Uyeno to worship at the tombs of his ancestors. On the 20th day of the 12th month, as snow began to fall softly over the city, Sōgorō positioned himself beneath the Sanmei bridge, hidden in shadows, clutching his memorial, which he had tied with utmost care to a bamboo pole. When the procession approached, the grandeur of it was like something from a dream. Guards in brilliant armor, banners bright against the grey sky, and at the center, the litter of the shogun himself, Prince Iemitsu, lord of all the land. Sōgorō took a long, deep breath. And then, with the calmness of one who has already made peace with fate, he stepped forward into history. The guards shouted, hands moved toward swords, but Sōgorō, pushing through the confusion, raised his pole high and offered his petition forward, his voice steady as he spoke. "I humbly beg your highness to hear our plea." And Prince Iemitsu, perhaps surprised by such singular courage, perhaps moved by such desperate faith, reached out and accepted the document. Then Sōgorō was taken, gently but firmly, by many hands, and led away to await judgment. But he had done it. The petition had been delivered. Winter deepened, the new year came and went, and in the cold months, decisions were made. When Lord Kotsuke no Suke received the memorial from the shogun and read its careful accounting, listing all the unjust taxes, all the suffering, all the abandoned villages and ruined temples, his face darkened. All not because he felt remorse for what had been done, but because he felt the sting of public judgment. That a peasant, a mere farmer, should make him appear unmerciful, should appeal over his authority to the shogun himself, was an affront he could not overlook. He gave orders, swift and final. The taxes would be reduced, yes, as honor demanded, but this Sōgorō, this man who had dared so much, would serve as a lesson to any who might follow his path. Not just the ending that awaited those found guilty of treason, but something more severe still. The judgment, when it came, extended beyond Sōgorō himself. His wife and his 3 young sons. Even the councillors, hardened men accustomed to harsh justice, pleaded for mercy, saying that surely the children were innocent of any wrongdoing, that surely the wife could not be held to account for her husband's courage. But Kotsuke no Suke would not relent. "Where the sin of the father is deemed great," he said, his voice cold as winter stone, "the family cannot be held apart from consequence." On the 9th day of the 2nd month, under a pale sky that held its breath, it is said that Sōgorō and his family were brought to a place of endings. People came from all the villages, old and young, men and women, not to witness cruelty, but to bear witness to love. They brought what little they had, sweetmeats and rice cakes, small offerings, thrown gently through the air, tokens of gratitude, from those who had so little to give. The story tells us that Sōgorō's family showed such courage that day, that even those who had come to carry out the sentence found themselves moved to tears. The eldest son, Genosuke, it is said, spoke with a clarity that seemed beyond his years. He told his parents not to grieve, that he would go ahead of them, like a lantern in the darkness, waiting on the far shore of the river that separates this world from the next. I will be there, the stories say he promised, to help you cross when your time comes. And his brothers, young as spring blossoms, their spirits moved ahead like bright lights in the distance, guiding the way their parents would one day follow. The priests came then, with gentle hands and sacred words, and carried the children away with chanting and incense, giving them all the ceremony that grief and love could provide. Then came the moment when Sōgorō and Man faced their fate together. Man, who had stood silent and strong throughout, now spoke, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd like temple bells. My husband, remember why we are here. We give one life for many. We lay down our names for generations to come. Be at peace, be calm, our children wait for us. This moment is brief, but what we do here is eternal. And Sōgorō, hearing her words, found a strange serenity. The old accounts say that he spoke then, not in anger, but with the certainty of one who sees beyond. I am content, for our petition was heard. The people will be spared. But know this, my lord Kotsuke no Suke, though you hide behind stone walls, though you surround yourself with guards, the truth will find you. What is done in darkness always comes to light. And then, as the winter sun climbed higher in the pale sky, Sōgorō's suffering ended. His spirit slipped free, as gently as a lantern flame going out in wind. The chronicles tell us something strange then, something that made even those present fall silent with wonder. When his life had departed, his head turned, slowly, impossibly, and faced toward the castle. A sign, those who saw it said, that his spirit had not finished its work. Even the executioners, hardened men, fell to their knees and bowed before what remained, recognizing, too late, that they had witnessed something sacred. But Lord Kotsuke no Suke, when he heard of this, only laughed in scorn. The hatred of a peasant, he said dismissively, what is that to me? He would learn. Time passed, as it always does. Spring came, then summer, then autumn once more, and the world turned indifferent, eternal. The taxes were reduced as promised, and the people, though they mourned, were able to eat again, to plant their fields, to repair their houses, to live. Sōgorō's sacrifice had not been in vain. But in the castle of Sakura, something else was unfolding. Lady Kotsuke no Suke, the lord's wife, was with child, and as her time drew near, the household began to feel a presence. It is difficult to describe. The old accounts say, not a thing seen, but a thing felt. A weight in the air, like the heaviness before a storm. At night, lights were seen above the lady's chamber, pale and drifting, like souls seeking rest. Sounds were heard, footsteps where no one walked, voices speaking words no one could quite discern, sometimes weeping, sometimes a strange laughter, as if the past itself had awakened and come quietly to collect what was owed. The servants grew uneasy, then afraid, for they felt they were not alone in those corridors, that something patient, something inevitable, was waiting. One night, when Lord Kotsuke no Suke himself kept watch, the presence made itself known more clearly. The chronicles say he felt rather than saw, Sōgorō and man, as they had been on that final day, standing in the shadow, waiting. Not with rage, but with the calm certainty of truth. "We have come," they seemed to say without words. "The wheel turns, and all things return in their season." Lord Kotsuke no Suke drew his sword, struck at the shadows, but a sword cannot cut conscience, cannot drive away what lives in memory. Priests were summoned, rites were performed, prayers chanted day and night, incense burning, the air thick with sacred smoke and desperate hope. But the presence remained. And in the last month of the year, Lady Kotsuke no Suke, worn down by sleepless nights and nameless dread, passed from this world. The doctors could find no cause, but those who had been near her whispered. They said she died of something medicine cannot cure. She died, they said, of truth. But still, the presence did not depart. Now it followed Lord Kotsuke no Suke himself, a shadow at his shoulder, a weight upon his thoughts. In every mirror, in every darkened room, in the space between sleeping and waking, he felt them there. Not threatening, simply present, bearing witness. The servants fled, one by one, unable to remain. Officials refused to enter the castle, and Lord Kotsuke no Suke found himself alone, surrounded by wealth, power, privilege, and haunted by the truth he had tried to silence. At last, his counsellors came to him with a proposal. "My lord," they said carefully, "there is only one way forward. Sōgorō must be honoured, made a saint, given a shrine. What was taken unjustly must be restored. Only then will balance return. Only then will peace be possible." And so it was done. Sōgorō was given the holy name of Sogo Daimyo. A shrine was erected in his honour, beautiful as a jewel. Divine rites were performed, prayers offered, and gradually, slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night, the presence withdrew. Not with violence, but gently, like mist dispersing in morning sun. Sōgorō's spirit, honoured at last, departed for the realm beyond, his work in this world complete. But the story does not end with the shrine. For in the way of all things, the wheel continued to turn. Lord Kotsuke no Suke, though freed from the presence that had haunted him, was not freed from the pattern his choices had set in motion. Not long after, during a ceremony at the shogun's castle, he found himself in a dispute with another lord. Words were exchanged, honour was questioned, and in a moment of ungoverned anger, he drew his sword within the sacred precincts of the castle itself. For this grave breach, he was declared outlaw, his lands were forfeit, his name disgraced. Everything he'd sought to protect by silencing Sōgorō was lost. The wheel turns, as it always does, and those who sow cruelty reap sorrow. But in the villages of Shimōsa, where rice grows green in spring and golden in autumn, where cherry blossoms return each year like faithful friends, where morning mist rises from the fields like prayers, the people remember. They remember a man named Sōgorō, who loved them more than life, who gave everything, asking nothing in return, so that they and their children might have enough. They tend his shrine with flowers. They light candles on the anniversary of his death. They tell their children his story, and their children's children, so that his name will never fade. And on quiet nights, when the wind moves through the pines, and the moon rises full and bright, some say you can still feel it, the presence of something kind, something watchful, a gentle spirit, protecting those who till the land. For love, true love, does not die. It changes form, but it does not end. It becomes story, becomes memory, becomes the invisible thread that binds generation to generation. And so, the story is handed down, from parent to child, from teacher to student, from one season to the next. The tale of a farmer who became a saint, a man who showed that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it for the sake of others. Now, as our story draws to its close, imagine the shrine of Sōgorō as it stands today, peaceful in the dappled evening light that filters through pine branches, incense rising like prayers made visible, paper lanterns glowing soft as fireflies, and ancient trees whispering their song to the wind. The farmers come, as their fathers came, and their fathers before them, and leave their offerings with quiet gratitude. A handful of rice, still warm from the harvest, a cup of sake, poured with ceremony, a single flower, placed with care. Not because they must, but because, remembering, they find themselves grateful. For in giving his life, Sōgorō gave them theirs. In accepting one ending, he ensured countless new beginnings. And though he lost everything in one sense, in another, he gained what cannot be taken, a name that will not fade, a story that will not end, a love that time itself cannot diminish. The night grows deep now and beautifully still. The moon climbs higher in the vast sky. Stars appear, one by one, like distant lanterns being lit, each one a small light in the darkness, yet together, illuminating all. Somewhere, a temple bell rings, its sound rolling across the sleeping land, peaceful, measured, eternal as the turning seasons. And in the villages, lights go out one by one, families gather close, children are tucked beneath warm quilts, safe and warm, beneath roofs that shelter them, fed by fields that still bear fruit, because one man decided that their hunger mattered more than his life. The world turns, seasons pass without pause, blossoms fall and return each spring, snow melts into rivers, rivers flow to the endless sea, and the sea gives back the rain that feeds the fields. Nothing remains exactly as it was, yet everything continues. This is the great mystery, the gentle truth that lives at the heart of all things. We are small, our lives brief as cherry blossoms on the wind, yet we are connected to something vast, something that does not end. And when we live for others, when we give freely, love truly, sacrifice willingly, we touch that vastness. We become part of the great story that was here before us and will be here after, the story that has no beginning and no end. So sleep now, dear listener, sleep deeply, sleep well. Let the story settle gently around you, like snow falling on quiet fields, like rain softening the earth after a long drought, like evening coming to a well-tended garden. Know that courage exists in quiet places, that love endures beyond what we can see, that sometimes the smallest life holds the greatest meaning. And know that you too are part of this beautiful, intricate, wondrous dance of life and death, of suffering and joy, of loss and finding, of ending and beginning, of impermanence, and that which cannot be destroyed. The shrine of Sōgorō stands still beneath the stars. The lanterns glow with their soft light. The incense rises like prayers seeking heaven, and somewhere in the realm beyond, a farmer and his family rest in peace, their work complete, their sacrifice not forgotten, their love still felt by those who till the land. The night deepens, the wind stills to barely a whisper, and silence spreads like a blessing over the world. Breathe slowly now. Let your thoughts drift like clouds. Let the weight of the day fall away like autumn leaves. Let peace come to you as naturally as sleep comes to a child. And so, our story ends, not with fanfare or finality, but with the simple, profound stillness of night falling. The blossoms fall, the seasons turn, and peace, like a gentle rain, returns once more.